how many times are Dennis and I going into the creek? 0, 1, 2, 3, or more?
On purpose or accidental?
It'll be accidental. I don't want to go in.
If it happens, it's going to be Garry's fault.
Totally.
Not going to be my fault.
Everybody get the donations going in the chat because we might need to get some new mics.
Yeah, there we go.
Andy Poulton behind the camera there. Real quick, Mike, if people want to learn more about Eagle Aquatics or book a trip, how do they do that?
They can email me, mrmike.dudash, D-U-D-A-S-H, dudash.
We couldn't be in better hands, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Man. He knows this
All right.
creek. He's been up and down this creek hundreds of times.
Hundreds
of times.
Yeah, over 1,000 trips.
Yeah.
On this creek.
So,
All right,
He
Mike.
taught me to hold the thing
Let's
like
get
this.
these boys rolling.
Yeah, all
It's
right.
time.
Well,
do
good.
it.
So I'm going to get your boat to the water. You're going to take your time getting down and don't slip and bust your ass. He's using his paddle as a walking stick. And the hardest part of today is going to be getting from this grass down to the water. I'll stabilize your boat down there. You get in one at a time and you get out one at a time.
look how steep this is. Boy, this is typical of the Antietam Creek. People don't realize how steep these banks are. Hard to get in, harder to get out.
All right, let the adventure begin.
All right, boys, have fun. I'll see you in about an hour and a half.
We right now are about 300 feet upstream on the Antietam Creek above the upper bridge. And we're going to be turning, facing downstream here, and we're going to be heading towards the bridge. So that's what we'll be coming to next. And we'll stop, we'll talk a little bit about the upper bridge. Notice, Garry, how we get in that current, how quickly things move?
Heck yeah. So, just to help us out, Dennis, there were how many bridges crossing the Antietam on the battlefield proper?
Well, there are really 4. Now, most people think in terms of 3 bridges, but in actuality, there are 4. This is the uppermost of those bridges that we refer to as the upper bridge. Historically, it's known as the Hitt Bridge or the Hitt Bridge, but it's located about 2.5 miles upstream from what's known as the Middle Bridge. And the Middle Bridge is a place that most people actually cross on the Antietam Creek when they're visiting the battlefield, because that is the road today that leads from Sharpsburg to Boonesboro. And today that's a modern bridge, but historically it looked just like this one. It was a 3-arch stone bridge. The lower bridge, which is about 3.5 miles from here, is today famously known as the Burnside Bridge. And then the lowest of them all is the Antietam Ironworks Bridge, which is truly at the mouth of the Antietam Creek. That's almost 7 miles from here. Let's stop here for a second, Garry. Let's just stop. There we go. And so this bridge, this massive stone bridge, is made out of limestone, looks a lot like the Burnside Bridge, was built by the same person who constructed the Burnside Bridge, a fellow named John Weaver. This bridge is older than Burnside Bridge, and it's still in use. You can actually take your car, your tractor, your vehicles across this bridge today. It was one of 30 bridges built in Washington County, Maryland, because of the great stone that we had here. The limestone, making for such a strong foundation and structure. This bridge has been through flood after flood after flood after flood, yet it still stands, and it was built about 1830. And so really something quite special. And it's going to become very prevalent during the battle as prelude to the battle. So let's go on under the bridge and have this experience. Okay, paddle, 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 paddle. Keep paddling. Good. Good, Garry, good. That was a good test. I did that on purpose. I took you right between those rocks on purpose. Good job.
Well, Dennis, here's what I want to know. The Union First Corps crossed on the upper bridge, but some of them, or some of the other people with them, also crossed at a ford between here and Prize Ford, am I right?
Yes, and we will see that ford, we will cross that ford, we will experience that ford, and it's coming up very quickly. I think you raise a good point about you know, what's going on here? Why are we even at this bridge? What's happening here? Why is it significant in the battle at all? Well, there's no fighting here at the bridge, and that's really important to understand. That what's happening is General Lee doesn't have enough men here to hold all the passages of the creek. And McClellan figures that out. McClellan, when he arrives on September the 15th, along with elements of the 1st Corps, elements of the 5th Corps, elements of the 2nd Corps, all of them starting to arrive here on the 15th, 2 days before the battle. The creek is a moat. Think of the creek as a moat between the Confederate Army and the United States Army. And Lee is on one side of the moat, and of course, General McClellan is going to arrive and be on the other side. So it's a massive moat. Now this has some advantage for General Lee, because that means that he has to hold and protect and defend on his side of the moat, which means that if the Federals go across the moat, General Lee's principal form of defense here, the Antietam Creek, has been breached. We don't want that to happen if you're General Lee. But Lee's problem is he doesn't have enough men here. We need to remember that by the time the Union Army arrives here on September the 15th, Harper's Ferry, let's keep things in context, Harper's Ferry is just capitulating, it's just surrendering. So 2 out of every 3 Confederates in Lee's army, 2/3 of Lee's army is not here. It's at Harper's Ferry. It's a minimum 1 full day's march from here, and that includes a crossing of the Potomac River. And so McClellan, when he arrives, they begin to scout possible crossings of the Antietam Creek. Now McClellan himself has an excellent defensive position. We don't think of George McClellan being on defense here at Antietam, but he's got a superb defensive position. If he wants to take positions on his side of the creek and dare Lee to come across, McClellan's got high ground, he's got the moat in front of him, he's got a superb position, better than Malvern Hill, better than any defensive position he's had thus far as a commander of the Union Army.
Hey, Dennis, let me break in for a sec too, because, you know, since you mentioned Malvern Hill, another battle, I wonder if anybody is thinking about, you know, First Manassas or Bull Run, where General Beauregard cannot cover all of the fords with the force he has. The rest of his force is in the valley with Joseph E. Johnston, and the Union again finds one on their far right, or the Confederate left flank, in that case Sudley or Sudley Springs Ford, to get on into the Confederate flank. And here the same thing is happening.
It's all about the flanking maneuver. It's all about finding the weakest part of a line, and the weakest part of a line is always a flank, the edge of the line. And so if you can find that edge and put your force around that edge, the opposition is immediately at disadvantage. You know, back in the days when football was in its earliest years, they had a position out on the edge called flanker. And the flanker was called that because that particular person was literally the last man on the team at the farthest end of the field. And so that's exactly what's going on here, is that McClellan on the 15th is exploring possible options, possible alternatives to get across the creek and possibly strike General Lee. The option becomes the upper bridge. Lee can't defend it. He doesn't have enough men here to defend it. He's still waiting for 2/3 of his army to arrive from Harper's Ferry. And so McClellan is able to cross the creek uncontested. What a great opportunity it is.
And let me just say, Dennis, that I can't, and I'm sorry to keep breaking in, but I am seeing it for the first time, seeing what this creek would have looked like to some of the soldiers when they were crossing, when they were fording it. And even with a little bit of distant modern noise, there's something about the floating, and what I'm seeing right in front of me is just incredible. So thanks to you and Mike.
That's why we call this tour Antietam, as seen from the Antietam.
I also like Battle Paddle. That's Mike's term.
Battle Paddle. We'll give Mike.dudash, our outfitter, credit for Battle Paddle. And this is very much what the creek would have looked like in September of 1862. Notice debris in the creek? Yeah, you're going to have debris in the creek. Notice the vegetation along the creek, probably much thicker today than it would have been in 1862. Our banks would have been much more exposed. Keep in mind that on our left and our right, we've got farms, we've got pasture, and the creek is a principal source of water. I mean, there's no such thing as digging a well with a pump that provides your cattle or your sheep or whatever your livestock might be with water that's coming up out of the ground. So it was much easier just for the animals, the four-legged critters, just to walk right here into the creek and drink.
And Dennis, you're an expert, but we don't have to take your word for it. We can just look at Alexander Gardner's photos that show how clear it was around the creek, what it actually looked like. We can do that because Gardner came here under Matthew Brady's employ.
Now we're coming up on a junction here, and we've got another body of water coming in on our left. And this is the Little Antietam Creek. This is the Little Antietam. This is the confluence of the Antietam with the Little Antietam. Let's go, Gary. We can go up there a little bit. So you go ahead and paddle. I'm going to steer us right into the Little Antietam.
So there's Antietam and Little Antietam, but there's no Big Antietam. The Antietam is the Big Antietam.
The Antietam is the Big Antietam.
Check it out. I've only seen this from a road, and barely that.
This is a tributary, main tributary. The water that creates the Little Antietam is all coming from the southern end of Washington County, coming off of Elk Ridge, coming off of Red Hill. It's draining here into the Little Antietam Creek.
You know, Dennis, it would be helpful so people can kind of gather maybe that upper bridge is off to our left here. Is there anything else people would recognize that you could point to in this direction? Like as we are here on the Little Antietam, where's Keedysville, where's Sharpsburg?
So Keedysville is straight ahead of us. If we were able to keep paddling straight up this creek, we would come to Keedysville, and it would probably be close to 1.5 miles up the creek from this location. So we're pretty close to Keedysville. Keedysville is a little town that's halfway between Boonesboro and Sharpsburg. In fact, it was the location of Army headquarters, Army base camp for the Union Army during the battle engagement. But the principal thing that you would notice here if you came along this route, and you can follow a road that parallels the Little Antietam Creek, that is the Keedysville Road. If we were doing that, we would see a very large brick building up here to our right, and that is the Samuel Frye Mill. And Frye is a name that's familiar to Antietam aficionados. P-R-Y. Philip Frye, Samuel Frye are co-owners of the Frye Mill. That piece of machinery
I
is
swear,
driving me crazy.
Maybe it is, but I'm hearing the Frye Mill, actually. It sounds like they're
think
sawing
that's what
some
the
wood
Frye
up there.
Mill is? Yeah,
Oh,
they're grinding, man.
For purposes of this video, that's what it is.
We are grinding grain in the Frye Mill.
We're
I think that thing is actually moving on the Keedysville Road, so it gives you an idea how close the creek is to the road.
All right.
Now you can see here that the creek is much more shallow.
Yes. It's different, you know, Dennis, we have both led hundreds of buses around battlefields, but this requires a much more immediate overseeing of the directional operations on a tour. Especially.
Yeah, you and I just can't talk on this. This is participation. And now we're back out in the Antietam.
All right, super cool. And we've joined our friends here, Kris and Mike.
Kris, you'll definitely want to come take a look at this. This is a good ford. Look at how shallow it's getting.
I see.
See how shallow it's getting?
This would just get to the top of your brogans.
Go forward a little bit more. Notice the current.
Yep.
All right, we're in the heart of the current. I want you to feel it.
I do.
Because if you're walking across this ford, this is the current that you feel. Now, even though you're in the ford, it's dangerous.
Right. Anybody who's spent enough time in rivers knows what something like this can be. So Dennis, does this ford have a name?
It is nameless.
Okay, and is this ford the one where there's a big impressive drawing of troops crossing the creek.
Probably.
Okay, we'll flash that up. I think it is.
Yeah, this ford, and Kris can get a really good view of it here. We are located downstream from the upper bridge. Now you can't even see the bridge. We are downstream from the juncture or the confluence of the Little Antietam Creek and the Antietam Creek. This was a very important crossing point on September the 16th and September the 17th. Now you can really see what a ford is. Now, for someone who's not familiar, this would just be a small rapid. You would call it a rapid, and indeed it is. But notice how the earth is uplifted so that there's very little water. In fact, some places you can actually see the bottom of the creek at the top of the water. They've come together. They've condensed into one. And so this is a natural crossing point. This was not built by indigenous peoples. This is a natural crossing point. And the engineers, the Army engineers, the Army of the Potomac, discovered this ford when they were also searching for the upper bridge. Now, Garry, I got a question for you. Kris, I have a question for you. We could see the ford. We understand the ford. We're literally sitting on the ford. What's the problem here? What kind of problem do we have crossing here?
I'm seeing one right there, Kris.
The banks are a huge problem. There's no ingress and egress.
What if I have artillery with me or wagons? How are they going to get up?
Not possible. Not possible. And so even if you're just infantry, and I don't like to use the word just before infantry, but in comparison to artillery, or even cavalry, what horse is going to ascend that slope? Look at that slope. Look at the steepness of that slope.
So even the officers with the infantry.
Exactly. Would not be able to cross here. So we have the convenience of the ford and the inconvenience of the banks. And I think that's one of the things that most people don't understand about the Antietam Creek, is that these banks are steep throughout. If you've been watching, you saw us get into the creek above the upper bridge. You saw how steep it was, how difficult it was.
And we picked the best spot.
We did. We picked an easy spot, easy in quotation marks. Yeah. Look at this. I mean, you and I could go over there and stand, and that steep bank is higher than our vertical elevation, higher than our height.
And we're tall, Dennis, you and I. We're known for our height.
You have a new definition of tall.
Well, so
get in touch with Merriam-Webster to make sure they understand that Dennis Frye and Garry Adelman are now considered tall.
It's the new tall. So what I would say, so a good commander, or one who might want to make use of every possible thing, is cross the foot soldiers here, take the artillery and the cavalry across the upper bridge?
That's exactly right. Use the bridge to take across your heavy armament, your cavalry, and if necessary, get the infantry across here. Now we know for certain that when the First Corps crosses, the bridge is a bottleneck. That bridge that we saw is only 16 feet wide. And so we're going to try to move in the First Corps alone, Joe Hooker's First Corps, on that flanking maneuver to get around General Lee's left flank. We're going to try to move all close to 11,000 men across that bridge. It's going to take a long time. And so we need to keep in mind that time is very significant. Every moment that McClellan is not on Lee's side of the creek is more moments for Lee to get more men from Harper's Ferry, to reinforce.
Yeah.
So this isn't some twiddly-dee, twiddly-dum movement. We got to get this done. And so even though this ford is not the best in terms of its practicality, the Pontoneers, the United States Army Pontoneers, the engineers are going to come down here and make this in some way or other more passable. Now I don't know what they did. There's no evidence of it today because whatever they did has disappeared.
Maybe
through years
cut
of
an
flooding.
angle on the opposite
They probably
bank.
cut an angle on the opposite bank so that the men could get down here and get up out of here and make this ford a passable point.
One last point before maybe we go. I just wonder if this will help to silence or get the Burnside Bridge people who think they know just what they would have done. How easy it would have been to use Snavely's Ford to get all the artillery across and all the cavalry across. Maybe they will look at a reassessment when they see something like this.
This creek completely changes interpretations of the Battle of Antietam. I mean, we need to understand that most of the battle is not fought on the creek. Almost none of it, with the exception of the little bit around the Burnside Bridge, is actually fought on the Antietam. But this creek is determinant in terms of how the battle will be fought, how we get troops on the field, especially for McClellan. McClellan's got to get his army across the creek. So we often think about McClellan here being slow, being cautious, being methodical, and those are characteristics, there's no question, of George McClellan. But here, I'm going to use a word that almost is an oxymoron with George McClellan. He is aggressive. He is attempting to move his forces across this moat using whatever means he can rapidly, because he knows time is against him if Lee is reinforcing as his army reunites coming up from Harper's Ferry. So McClellan does not have the luxury of time here. So any way we can get across the creek, we're going to do it. And this ford, though not the best, will be modified by the pontoneers, by the engineers, in such a way that we move an entire infantry division across here. And you want to talk about something important. One of the things, look, again, nobody sees this. You don't see this unless you're on the creek or if you own the property on either side of the creek. And this is all private property. That's not public property over here. That's not the Antietam Battlefield, and it's not the Antietam Battlefield here. So the only way we can see this is through the courtesy of Mike, our outfitter, coming here to be able to come out and see it from the creek itself. But what I want to point out here is that this also becomes a crossing point for the 6th Corps later in the day that comes as a reinforcement to the field. And so again, McClellan trying to get forces on the field as quickly as possible. The 6th Corps coming up from Pleasant Valley in front of Harper's Ferry to reinforce the U.S. Army. This proves right here at this ford is a location where McClellan doesn't simply keep his reinforcements on his side of the creek. They cross at this point. They ultimately end up in front of the Dunker Church, and they help preserve the line there for McClellan at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 17th. This is where Franklin's forces will cross.
That sounds like reassessment need number 3. Aha! McClellan didn't have 170,000 soldiers on the other side of Antietam Creek that he wasn't using. He moved the whole 6th Corps and a lot of the 5th Corps across this creek.
That's correct. It happened on battle day. And in fact, the 6th Corps was not even here when the battle began. They weren't sitting over there in reserve. They were in Pleasant Valley. They were about 6 miles north of Harper's Ferry. Of course, they had been fighting in the battle at Crampton's Gap. They were bivouacked in that area.
Yeah.
And they marched from Crampton's Gap that morning. We often think about the great march of Antietam is, who is it, Gary?
A.P. Hill.
A.P. Hill,
But
coming up in the afternoon. But another forced march that once again nobody talks about was William Franklin and the Union 6th Corps. They did a forced march that morning, leaving Pleasant Valley at 5:30 in the morning. Once McClellan determined that Lee was not leaving here, he was going to fight here, he sent orders to Franklin to get your tail up here, and Franklin began moving at 5:30 a.m. on the 17th. His forces were here on the field by 9:30, 10 o'clock. Forced march, quality forced march, and here for McClellan to put on into the field, which he does. He commits both divisions, Slocum's divisions and Smith's divisions, on the Lee or Confederate side of the creek.
2 things. One, I hope Kris gets a picture because now we know how the infantry got down to the ford. There are some convenient stairways. 2, picking up where what you were saying, just for people who don't spend a lot of time here, I'd much rather be at Fox's, Turner's, or Frosttown Gap if I was marching in Antietam than at Crampton's.
They're all closer.
Yes, exactly. Crampton's is much farther away. So before you blame Franklin too much, he does have some logistical realities to deal with.
Well, and we shouldn't blame him because he conducted an outstanding forced march that morning. And it's just one of those unheralded events of Antietam that the United States Army gets no credit for. That's a hike we should do sometime, Gary. You and I should follow Franklin's route from Crampton's Gap to the Antietam Battlefield. The route is extant, it's all original. The only thing that's happened is they've paved the roads. We ought to be able to see if we can do it as fast as Crampton's men did it, as Franklin's men. Yeah, you'll follow in the car. Kris is going to follow in the car.
I would just be concerned that it might be a little too easy.
Oh.
Kris, we'll give Dennis a 50-pound pack, though, to make it realistic.
Well, after that 20-mile hike that you and I did together last year on the Antietam Battlefield, that hike with General Franklin from Crampton's Gap to Keedysville ought to be pretty easy.
Yeah, and you still had gas in the tank. We both did. Yeah. Well, this is just beautiful. I can't stress it enough. I mean, here I've seen a creek I've never seen from the creek. I've seen a ford I've never seen before, except in a photo or a drawing.
Now
And
notice in front of us, see how the water starts to break?
yeah,
That's a sign of where the ground level is elevating so that it gives us just a little bit of a ripple or a little bit of a rapid. Let's let Mike go ahead here. I wonder how many of our viewers would like to do this and be with us today. Well, we
Yeah.
could have a flotilla.
Well-
We'd have a whole army. We'd have to bring in the United States Navy.
they're going to tell us, to be sure, if they wanted to be here, and if not, they can hire Mike and maybe even get you someday. Who knows? I know you are in play hard to get.
Listen to that rapid.
This is great. Super cool. What's the deepest part of this creek? Does it ever get 10 or 15 feet?
I don't know where that well. Yes, at man-made dams.
Yes, of course.
And this creek actually was a hydraulic source that helped make people very wealthy here in the Antietam Valley. If you wanted to become rich in the Antietam Valley, like the Frye family, like Philip and Samuel Frye, own a grist mill. This was a great agricultural valley growing wheat. Wheat was a product that was gold during the 18th and 19th century. And you could make a lot of money by milling wheat into flour. And so to have a flour mill, the only source of power that you had was water power, hydraulic power. And so the Antietam Creek was dammed up over and over and over again by these various entrepreneurs in the 18th century. I'm talking 1740s, 1750s. Even before the French and Indian War, the Antietam Creek is a source of energy for the purpose of producing flour from these mills. And so obviously at a dam, the creek could really back up and get deep. But naturally, it's not very deep at all. In most cases, you and I can see the bottom. Most cases with our paddle, we can feel the bottom. It's just not very deep. That doesn't mean it's not dangerous. I mean, all water can kill you if you're not careful. And that's the reason why we're wearing our life preservers. Now that's the way to see the creek, Gary. Look at those geese.
Yeah.
Look at that aerial view they've got.
And you know what? And I haven't stepped in any goose dump since we've been out here. So that's a great thing in
That's a
itself.
good thing. We don't want to be stepping in goose dump while we're in the boat. So we're going to follow Mike through. We got a rapid here.
Yeah. Looks like he's going to the right side.
Actually, let's stop here. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's just follow him through. Follow him through.
All right.
Follow him through.
We're not quite going where he was.
Okay, we'll get down low. Okay, I got you. I got
Okay,
you.
good.
Stay low.
This looks pretty decent to me.
Stay low. Follow him. Stay low.
I'm going to lift this up for me. Get ready.
Okay, good. Paddle, 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 paddle. Good, 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 Gary. Good, 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 good. Well done, well
You're
done.
doing your
You're an
Stonewall
excellent-
Jackson quote there. Good, good.
You're an excellent partner here. Doing great.
A little sycamore as far as I know.
Yes, sir. Sycamore trees. Yeah.
Classic for the Antietam, of course.
That one's not quite as old as our friend at the Burnside Bridge. We'll get a
No.
good close-up view of it.
No, but I think, yeah, Antietam, most of Antietam's witness trees, according to the park, are sycamores. And
Yes.
there's a good number on the roulette farm, as I remember.
Now notice we start to see some open pasture
Yes.
on our left and on our right, and the banks aren't quite as low. And this is what it more would have appeared as on battle day, much more open like this, where we
Yes.
could actually see the ground. Now the banks are still steep, not quite as steep as where we were a moment ago, but you can't cross here, it's too deep. This section of the creek that we're in here,
Oh, yeah.
if you're wearing your waist belt with your percussion caps and your cartridge box, you're going to be in the drink.
You'd have to hold that and your gun.
You'd have to be holding your
bullets
gun
over
up
the head.
and everything up above your head. And soldiers, you know, we need to remember that we as a society, as a culture, we love to swim. And a lot of people that live in this country today know how to swim. During the Civil War, most people did not know how to swim. Swimming was not a big recreation. People were afraid of water like this. They know that water like this can kill people, can drown you. And so water was not a welcome sight. And so if you can't see the bottom, you didn't want to go into it. You did not want to go into it. And you cannot see the bottom here, Gary. We're very deep.
No. He seems like at least 5 feet. And that'll kill somebody.
Yeah, that fear of not being able to swim and being in water where you can't see the bottom of the creek was a very, very real phobia.
And imagine if you're wearing a pack and you have even slight swimming skills, you get waterlogged and, oh.
Well, and then of course, what happens if your cartridges get wet? You're just useless.
Yep.
You're absolutely useless. You can have 60 rounds, and if you take a dump in this water, you are a completely useless soldier.
So
Your percussion caps can't get wet. I mean, this is one reason why they could not be, sometimes were not very effective fighting in rain. Well, you know, moisture is the enemy of black powder and a percussion
yes,
cap.
it is. So here we are approaching, I assume, sort of almost halfway through our float, and we haven't dumped yet. How are you feeling? Are you willing to tempt fate and make a proclamation or an estimate, Dennis?
No. I'm not making that until we go over the final dam. The final dam is below Burnside Bridge.
I've seen that dam
test.
many a time,
Yeah.
and I've never thought about going over it on a canoe.
We're going over it today, buddy. And if we make it over that dam without dunking, then we've had a great day.
Then we end at Nutter's and celebrate.
Well, we've been to Nutter's. Gary and I have been to Nutter's. We've done a video about Sharpsburg, downtown Sharpsburg,
Yep.
and the great site Nutter's is with its ice cream.
Nutter's is very popular.
And wouldn't you know, the outfitter's already thinking about ice cream. We're out here in the middle of the Antietam Creek.
No doubt.
Oh, feel that breeze.
That's great.
Ah, that breeze feels great.
Yeah, this is some good Battle of Antietam
You know, actually,
weather.
today is weather day. Today, September 17th, 1862 is almost identical to what we've got today.
Yes.
The temperature was about 75 degrees, fairly high humidity, and sunrise was at 5:43 a.m. Of course, there was no such thing as daylight savings time. So 5:43 a.m. the sun rises. General Lee got up that morning at about 4 a.m. And McClellan, you don't know exactly what his schedule was, but I'm sure he was awake. Another thing we need to know, Gary, is McClellan actually did cross the creek. He probably went across the upper bridge. In fact, I'd say, I almost guarantee you he went across the
that's
upper bridge
interesting.
on the 16th, the day before the battle. As General Hooker's forces were crossing the bridge and getting on the Confederate side of the creek, McClellan wanted to go over there too and see what was going on. And they were very pleased that they had no opposition. They were very pleased that they were actually able to capture the Hagerstown-Sharpsburg Turnpike, cutting off Lee's route north. And that was a great accomplishment for McClellan, again, which he gets very little credit for.
Yes,
that
you're
was really,
so right.
That was really the purpose of the flanking maneuver. The purpose of the flanking maneuver, you and I have talked about this before, was to seize the route north so Lee could not continue the invasion into Pennsylvania.
More particularly, I learned that from you.
So
now it's my thing, but I learned it from you.
I'm very happy to share it with you as your thing, because McClellan literally stops the invasion at this point. And he did it because he came across the creek, he used the upper bridge and the ford below it, and he actually seizes the Hagerstown Turnpike, which is about 2 miles or so from the upper bridge. Great accomplishment by McClellan, and he hardly fired a shot. No opposition. Once again, Lee just didn't have the manpower to be able to cover that crossing. I want to share a theory with you, Gary. My theory is that General Lee, I can't prove this, but this is just a supposition. Lee, knowing McClellan, we got a rapid coming up. Okay,
Yeah.
let's concentrate on this rapid.
All right.
We'll come back to General Lee.
Trying to
McClellan.
go right where he was.
Paddle, 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 paddle. Paddle, paddle, paddle. Paddle, paddle, paddle. Paddle, paddle hard. Paddle, paddle hard.
Good.
Good job. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Well done in the back.
I don't know if any of you noticed any anxiety on my face as we went through that rapid.
Well, we've got a camera right on your face.
Gary's got a camera right on me. That was well done. Hey, we've got a personal escort. We've got Canada geese that are leading us down the creek, showing us the way. Hey, got a rapid. Paddle, paddle, paddle. Paddle, paddle. Paddle, paddle. Are you surprised, Gary, at how often these rapids come up?
I guess I had no thought of it. You know, I've had such a limited engagement with the creek at such few disparate spots that I guess I don't know if I'm surprised or not, Dennis.
What do you see here to your right? Look to your right. What do you see to your right?
Well, I see the Three Farms Trail.
Do you see that stone wall?
Yeah.
That's not natural. Somebody built that up. That's been built up.
To
Now,
protect
my
the creek.
guess is at one time that was a approach for cattle.
Could have been a
into
bridge.
the creek.
Okay, yeah.
So there's little idiosyncrasies that when you open your eyes and you're going down here that you could see that to say, ah, yeah, look at that. That's an anomaly. Wonder what was happening there. Now notice the limestone. Notice the natural limestone here along the rock.
Oh, yeah.
And of course you can see the results of flooding. You can see that the roots of these trees are exposed. What a creature is a tree. What a creation is a tree. I mean, these things weigh thousands and thousands of pounds.
All right, you're steering, Dennis, right?
I'm
So
steering.
here's
You're
where I
going to
get
do the paddle,
momentum
buddy.
going. So I'm your target. Keep pulling yourself to me, pulling yourself to me, pulling yourself
Come
to
on.
me, pulling yourself
Pull hard,
to
pull
me.
hard, pull hard, pull hard.
Big rock there. Hold on. Hold
That's
on.
good.
Come on.
Good, 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 good.
Come on.
Good, good. Pull, pull, pull hard, pull hard, pull hard. There you go. Let's just stop and look at what we went through. And we
Nice,
did
good
not
job,
go
fellas,
under,
good
baby.
job,
We
fellas.
made it. Woo-hoo.
Survivor, everybody.
All right, good
So you
job.
see, when you paddle, you have control.
Yes.
And
It was
you
tempt-
slide over rocks and you bounce off of rocks. But what you
It
want
was
to avoid
tempting.
are trees in the water.
When you hit that rock, it's tempting to grab the sides and hope.
Yeah. And then
But
you
I didn't
lose
because of your
control.
training.
Well done, Gary.
Well done, Dennis.
I will recommend you to future canoe partners. Well done. Gentlemen, and I mean that as a compliment to both of you. What's the difference between this ford? Here we are at Prize Ford. Of the fords on the battlefield, there's two that are named. One of them is here, Prize Ford. The other one that's named is called Snavely's Ford. Snavely, S-N-A-V, I think it's S-N-A-V-E-L-Y, Snavely's Ford, is located down below Burnside Bridge and would be a significant crossing point for Rodman's division of the Union 9th Corps to flank the Confederates that were defending the Burnside Bridge position. This ford, Prize Ford, named after the Frye family, Samuel Frye and Philip Frye, is very substantial. And so we saw a ford earlier where we had Abner Doubleday's division crossing of the 1st Corps. Here at Prize Ford, we're going to have the Union 2nd Corps crossing. And I'm going to go just briefly talk about why they're crossing here. The battle is underway. McClellan's had great success that morning. He has pushed Lee back from the North Woods, pushed Lee out of the East Woods. He has sent Lee scurrying out of the cornfield, and Lee has lost the high position, the high ground on the Moomaw farm, which is where the visitor center is located today, opposite Dunker Church. So all along the line, the entire left and left center of Robert E. Lee's line has collapsed, We think about Lee trying to collapse Meade's line at Gettysburg on July 3rd. Well, here it happened to him. The difference is Meade held on July 3rd. Lee is losing, and he's already lost. The only Confederates that are in their original positions are either dead or crawling on the ground wounded. Every Confederate that could stand vertical is gone. They have retreated. They have left Lee's position, ranging from the Dunker Church all the way up towards the north end of the cornfield. They evacuated that position, and finally McClellan has had a victory, but it's not done yet. Fortunately, McClellan's got something in his back pocket, literally, and that's reinforcements. And that's the Union's 2nd Corps, the largest corps in the Army, a veteran corps, almost 16,000 men that McClellan has fought with, seen how they do in battle, and he trusts. And so at about 7:15, 7:20 in the morning, McClellan can see that the Confederate line has collapsed. He can see that from his headquarters on the high ground at the Philip Frye house. So let's finish him off. So he decides to bring in the 2nd Corps and move it from near his headquarters, where it's been held in reserve, and to commit them on the Confederate side of the creek to try to finish Lee off. And so they've got to find a place to cross. They don't have much time. They're not going to be able to use the bridge. They're not going to be able to use the upper bridge. So here's my first question to you two gentlemen. Why will the 2nd Corps not use the easy way across the creek? Why will it not cross the upper bridge?
Kris, you want to take a shot?
I'd say
What a coward! What a coward!
No, I have my answer.
Oh, he's got his answer.
I would say artillery and open ground.
Did you see how quickly he said
Oh,
that
he
to
kicked
you?
it over to me because, yeah.
This
You
is
got
how
the
I
right
am.
answer? What is it, Kris?
I would say artillery and open ground.
Gary?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that because you saw that they suffered some when they crossed the middle bridge later. But this is also a direct route that will take people largely unseen to the spot where they want to attack, toward the Potomac, or ultimately in this case toward the sunken road. So it's also a pretty direct route.
So your points are good.
But not the right ones.
Well, no. I'm just going to add a little bit. The fact that this maneuver can be done unseen is a very good point. Lee cannot see this. Lee cannot see these reinforcements coming onto the field. Remember, we're in a canyon. We are in a canyon that's been carved by the Antietam Creek. We were down in this bottomland. And so anybody that comes into this canyon can't be seen from the other side. And so it's a good way to bring reinforcements on the field without the enemy being aware of it. So good point. But here's the main reason. If we were where this force is located, at the Philip Frye farm, and the Philip Frye farm's right up there, right over here. That's where the 2nd Corps is, almost all 16,000 of them. For them to cross the upper bridge, they can't get to it easily because the little Antietam Creek blocks their approach. They literally have to go around and across the little Antietam, then cross the Antietam. So it lengthens their march considerably, and they don't have time for that. So although this is not as convenient, not as easy, it is much faster to go across here at Prize Ford because speed is of the essence. McClellan knows that reinforcements have been arriving from Harper's Ferry. He's aware of that. He's aware that every Confederate that comes on the field, his numerical superiority is getting less and less and less. And so he needs to get the 2nd Corps on the field as quickly as possible, and using this ford is the way to do it. Now, gentlemen, what's the difference between this ford and the one that we saw previously?
This one's, first of all, it's swifter, to be sure.
Stop. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. This is a waterfall. And remember I said earlier, most of these men can't swim. This is really frightening to cross here. The other thing is, if Garry and Kris and I got out here and tried to cross here, the current would absolutely sweep us away.
Even 3 or 4 inches of current, that's all it
would
takes.
Absolutely sweep us away. You know, all of us are aware about don't take your car into floodwaters because of the force of the water. The force of the water can pick up a car and carry you away quickly. We wouldn't stand a chance here. I mean, look at the speed of that water. Remember, swift current, the original indigenous name, the translation of Antietam. Here it is, prima facie evidence. So, how do you cross here, gentlemen? Because we're going to cross almost 16,000 men here. How do we do it?
Put a rope across and you put cavalry downstream to sweep up anybody who falls.
Okay, good idea. We got plenty of cavalry. Cavalry's not engaged. Many of Pleasantton's cavalry are literally on the hill behind us, up by headquarters. Many of Pleasantton's cavalry are right in the center of the field, so that's not a bad idea. Having rope, pontooniers, engineers certainly would have had that. You got something to hang on to give you balance. We don't know what it looked like here technically, and we don't have any reports about crossing the ford, but that would help to give us some stability. Now, all of us have hiked in Civil War brogans, Civil War shoes. What kind of traction do you have with a brogan?
Little to none.
None.
Especially when they're wet.
Yeah, none's a good four-letter word to describe traction with a brogan. I mean, you don't. That leather against that ground and you're gonna slip. And you're right, Kris, when it's wet, you can hardly stand up. It's like ice skating. And so, what do we do about that? What do we do about the fact that the brogans are so slick?
Go barefoot.
Barefoot, absolutely. Great idea. Take the shoes off, take a few minutes, take the shoes off. You're gonna have better traction with your naked foot than you are with that shoe on your foot. All right, is there any other factor that you might see under a consideration here on how we cross this point? Because this looks pretty impossible.
Well, we have rocks along the bank.
Yeah, look at how low the bank is.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to dig a road trench to get up here. This is accessible. Now on this side, it's a little bit steeper, but the banks are much more accessible here. We come out of this water, we're going to be wet. And so having rocks on the side allows us to climb up that bank without making that bank muddy and slippery. So we can get in and out of the creek much easier here, much more so than we could at the previous ford just below the upper bridge. There's one other thing that's really important here that's obvious, but it's not obvious today. I'll just give you that as a hint. It's obvious, but not today. The answer is we're in a drought. We're in a drought on September 17th, 1862. The creek doesn't look like this. Way too much water coming down through here. And so we don't know how low it was exactly, but there was no trouble crossing here. This falls was not a waterfalls. That's how low the creek was. I know this because if you research the local newspapers, the local papers at the time, they talk about the severe drought of the summer of 1862. They've got no rain. The drought was so bad, it killed the corn crop. They literally had to replant the corn crop because it died in the drought. The drought was so bad that the Potomac River was at its lowest point in recorded history in 1862. They had never seen it so low. So the Antietam looks very strong, powerful, and swift here today, but on battle day, you can walk across here. Now you're gonna get wet, your feet are gonna get wet, but the current's not gonna be strong enough to take you down. Good crossing point, and they took advantage of it with 16,000 men crossing here to go and try to destroy Lee in what would become the Battle of the West Woods. I would like for one other thing for you and our viewers to do. Think about crossing here and think. These men know that as soon as they get to this creek, they know what's on the other side. They know the enemy's on the other side. They know they're walking into the rattlesnake nest. And they know the rattlesnake's over there ready to bite. And Lee's poison is infectious and deadly. They know that. These are veteran troops. They've had to deal with Robert E. Lee and his Confederate Army. And so you come up out of that water, one of the things you're thinking about, and one of the things you're thinking about as you're crossing this ford is, how long do I have to live? For many of these men, by the thousands, within the next hour after they cross this point, they're going to be dead or wounded. For many of these humans, this is the last time as a human they are at a place on this earth of peace and a place of serenity. This is the last spot where they will experience peace and serenity. So you think about that. You got two divisions crossing here of a little over 11,000 men, and almost 50% of those men that walk across this creek with their shoes off, getting ready to go into battle, are not standing in an hour.
And well, what I'll say is, Dennis, I've been reading about prize Ford on and off for
Decades.
30 some years, yeah. And this is it. This is the first time I've ever seen it. So
What did you think it looked like, Gary? How
Not
does
like
it
this.
meet or not meet your expectations?
I pictured something like Snavely's Ford. I pictured nice little gravel, like easy to walk across. Nothing like this. Nothing like this.
How about you, Kris? What did you picture? Because you're well-versed, well-read. You know
Slot
Antietam.
machines, neon lights. I was expecting everyone to know where it was. No, I agree with Gary.
You know something? If it wasn't for the American Battlefield Trust and Battlefield Preservation, that's exactly what we would have here.
It's true.
Slot machines and neon lights.
No, it's actually more narrow than I thought it would be, and it's more of a rock ledge. It almost looks like a ledge, just almost like a natural bridge, which is pretty amazing to see, and especially from coming, from upstream to downstream, taking a look back towards it. I think it's a great perspective.
Gentlemen, let's proceed to the middle bridge.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. Get inspired at battlefields.org.